Are you military or former military and you're worried that you're headed toward divorce? Or you're in the middle of divorce and you're afraid that what will happen to your military benefits and military retirement, probably specifically. I know that you need answers. And the right answers to your questions, you can make informed decisions about how to proceed with your divorce. The first question I want to talk to you about is, can you file for divorce in the state of Maryland? The answer to that question is generally yes. Now, if one of you lives in the state, either you or your spouse, and has been a resident of Maryland for at least 1 year prior to the filing of your divorce, or if you're in the military and you've elected Maryland as your home state at least 1 year prior to the filing of the divorce, regardless of whether or not you've actually been in Maryland. So if you've been TUI or deployed, doesn't matter as long as Maryland's been your home state for a year prior to the filing of divorce. You can file for divorce in Maryland. Now, the next big question is, will you be able to retain sole ownership of the military pension? And the answer to that question is probably no. The amount of your pension that you acquired during your marriage will likely be divided between you and your spouse. If your spouse has their own pension, then the value of the marital portion of that pension will be equalized. And the spouse with the less amount pension that has accrued will receive an equalizing distribution from the other spouse. There's a federal law. It's called the Uniformed Services Former Spouses Protection Act, and that governs how military pensions are divided during divorce. It allows our courts to treat military pension as marital property. That means they're subject to division in divorce cases. The 1010 rule, it's also known as the 10-year rule. It's an important provision under that act, again, under that Uniformed Services Former Spouse Protection Act. And it's really about the duration of your marriage. So the marriage between a service member and the spouse must have lasted at least 10 years. And that 10 years of marriage must overlap with the member's 10 years of service. And that's credible military service toward retirement. It doesn't have to be continuous 10-year period, but the years that the member and the former spouse are married must add up to 10. So if the 1010 rule is met, the court can divide the military pension as a part of the overall property division in the divorce. And the non-military spouse can be entitled to receive a portion of the service member's retired pay directly from DFAS. Now, as DFAS is the Defense Finance and Accounting Services, they take care of all the military payments. They can send a direct payment to your former spouse. Now, the 1010 rule only governs whether or not DFAS will send direct payments to the former spouse of the military member. The former spouse's share is usually calculated based on a percentage of the military member's pension, which is usually determined by the court. If the 1010 rule is not met, then it doesn't mean that the former spouse doesn't have an interest in the pension. It just means that the payment, if the court orders them, must be made by the military member directly to the other spouse. The next thing I want to talk to you about is TRICARE and other benefits that we get from being in the military, and whether or not your former spouse will be eligible for TRICARE and other benefits. And that really depends on the length of the marriage and then specific circumstances surrounding your divorce. The non-military spouse can retain some military benefits, such as healthcare, commissary privileges, exchange privileges after the divorce, depending on the circumstances and how long you were married. During the marriage, the non-military spouse and any dependent children are eligible for TRICARE coverage. However, upon the divorce, the non-military spouse will lose the eligibility for TRICARE coverage if the spouse was not married to the military member for 20 years while the member was in the military. And that's based in what is called the 20-20-20. It's again under that federal law, the Uniformed Services Former Spouses Protection Act. The former spouse is eligible for TRICARE coverage like normal, and prescription drug coverage after the divorce if the three requirements are met. That's the military member and the spouse had 20 years of marriage, and the marriage between the service member and the spouse must have lasted for at least 20 full years. The second is that the service member must have completed 20 years of creditable military service toward retirement as of the date of the divorce. And the third requirement is the 20 years are overlapping, which means there must be at least 20 years of overlap between the marriage and the military service. So in other words, the military member's 20 years of service must have occurred during the 20 years that military member was married to the soon-to-be former spouse. If the former spouse satisfies all those requirements, they will retain access to the commissary. They can use military commissaries whenever, just like normal with a military ID. And if the former spouse does not meet the criteria for the 2020 rule, they may still be eligible for a different set of benefits under the 2020-15 rule, which has slightly different requirements and provides a little bit more of a limited period of continued coverage from TRICARE. So the 2020-15 is similar to 2020-20. If the military member and the spouse were married for 20 years or more, in only 15 years, between 15 and 20 years, where when the member was in the military, and that's when the 2020-15 rule applies. And to qualify for the 2020-15 rule, the following criteria need to be met. First, there's 20 years of marriage. The second, that the military member has 20 years of military service. And the third is that 15 years of marriage occurred during the term of that military service. So the former spouse will not have access to those military benefits. The former spouse will not have access to TRICARE coverage. Now, because military members travel a lot and are sometimes away or on TUI or deployed, the question is whether or not spouses can divorce while the members are active duty. And the answer is generally yes, but only if you want the divorce to proceed. The Service Member Civil Relief Act disallows a divorce action to proceed if the military member is on active duty.